are broke. I apologize for the slide. It's not as clear as it could be. We know that there are a number of different tools that might be available to address some of these questions, and we think that there are ways of establishing certain economic development tools that will allow our communities to restore the work that they were doing in the past. Currently, under the wind down, if these communities lose the ability to continue to redevelop these lands the way that the federal government agencies have agreed, that would mean that they would be in breach of federal contracts that are currently recorded in their communities. In addition to that, we think that the tax-based financing mechanisms that several of the other speakers mentioned before, and I don't need to reiterate them, would all be extremely useful in making sure that that recovery program moves ahead. Let me be really clear what I mean by that. In the case of most military-based recovery programs, there is a zero tax base. This is not a wind down or a redistribution of tax base. This is an absence of a future ability for these communities to rebuild and recover from the closure. This is not removing resources that would have gone to the schools or to help the state because there is a zero tax base. These were former institutional, federally owned facilities without a tax contribution. We do recognize that anything from limited obligation bonds to adjusting and amending Mello-Roos districts, to using the IFDs that three speakers spoke about before, to things like ad valorem taxes, all are possible. In our view, the state needs to recognize these communities and consider the creation of a military-based reuse and recovery zone that establishes a suite of tools that makes it possible for these recovery activities to occur. I mentioned earlier that these are communities that serve the nation in a considerable way. These are also communities that typically are Hispanic, African American, or for certain less than economically able as many other communities in the state. The wind down and redevelopment hurts these communities that are racially and culturally diverse in disproportionate ways that it affects others. While it affects everybody in a terrible way, it is extraordinarily difficult for our communities to recover. So I'd like to close with that comment and ask if there are any questions.
Mr. Nardi?
Help me with this. Are you saying, maybe you are, maybe you're not, that if this land was simply put on the market and sold as is, that it has no value and no one would buy it? Or are you saying that?
In many cases, this is land that still has existing contaminants. It has hazards, such as, in our case, we still have 3,300 acres that have not been cleared of munitions and explosives. In other cases, they're buildings with asbestos, lead-based paint, leaking PCBs, and as a consequence, those properties
I know all that, but still prime
would
central
not sell on the market because the cost of removing the hazards from the property are higher than the underlying value of the land.
So it would have no value?
In many cases, that's true.
All right.
Mr. Alejo?
Thank you, Mr. Hulamar, for coming up here from the Monterey Bay region. And certainly Fort Ord is the closest military base to my district, and certainly it was the U.S. Army base that my father was stationed at when he served in the U.S. Army. And so, I think this issue of how the elimination of RDA impacted military bases, it was one of the unintended consequences of AB 26X. Certainly, there wasn't I don't remember the discussions happening, focusing on how addressing this larger issue of RDA was going to impact the reuse of these military bases. And certainly, when the military base closed, I think overall California lost about 300,000 jobs, and there was a commitment made by state government and in our discussions with the federal government to put these back to good use and job creation for not only for those local communities nearest the Army bases, but as a regional plan to benefit the entire region and all these different areas that you had just mentioned, the 25 to 30 different communities. And we're also even facing possibly more. Hopefully, our U.S. Secretary of Defense, Leon Panetta, who's a former Congress member of our area, will look out for our state interest in those prioritizations. But nonetheless, it's a real ongoing concern because there could be more, and I think we need to be able to have the mechanisms to manage and finance the reuse. Fortunately, with the partnership with CSU Monterey Bay, we've been able to put some of that land at Fort Ord to use. But as you mentioned, there's much more property that hasn't been put to use because of not having the means to do that. And as you said, many of those acreages, are having munitions and contaminations, and they're very expensive to clean up and put to good public use. But nonetheless, there needs to be a funding mechanism to be able to create job creation and economic development at these military bases. And certainly we need to have a serious discussion about how to carry that goal this coming year, because it's certainly there needs to be that type of a tool. And currently, with the decisions made last year, there's very limited tools that you have in your role, and also the other coalition of military bases to create that economic development in those respective areas.
Well, I would just like to point out that that's exactly correct, and whether it's Marina, California, where they've had to recontribute a tax increment just to be able to encourage developers to complete a program on the base, or whether it's San Diego or Sierra Army Depot or Alameda, all of these issues that I'm mentioning in some level are impacting communities across the state. And I don't know if the idea of reuse and recovery zones goes beyond just military-based entities, but clearly these are areas which cry for blight removal, for hazard removal, for environmental restoration, and they are areas that can provide jobs for the state of California. So I ask you to consider the idea of creating special zones for these communities.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you for those comments, because in my own city, we have an old General Dynamics plant that once it was closed down, it became a very blighted area because of the contaminants that exist in that area. Assemblymember Adkins, you have a question?
Well, two comments I just want to make so people don't think that the conversation is being short-circuited on this issue. There's certainly a number of Assembly members that are interested in this issue of the reuse, particularly for bases in process, the 25 to 30 that you're talking about. And our working group is expanding the discussion, and it is certainly a nonpartisan issue. We have a number of members from both Republicans and Democrats who are going to be meeting with us, and I want to thank you for agreeing to participate and help us in that as we move forward. So this is by no means the last discussion on this particular issue, and it is a big enough issue in and of itself, sort of separate from redevelopment as a whole, that we're going to spend the time on it. And I want to thank the chairwoman for participating in that as well. And then the second thing, I put forward with the speaker and a number of other members AB 342, which we've expanded based on Secretary of Defense Panetta's comments about another round, that California, for many reasons, economic, national security, where we are located geographically, that we want to really be prepared to deal with this and address it. It gives it even more significance in light of a loss of a tool that has helped us to redevelop those bases. So just for the benefit of the public, we're going to continue to talk about this from a number of different fronts. And thank you for your comments.
You're welcome. And Chair, our coalition stands ready to assist in that effort in any way possible.
And thank you. This is not the end of this dialogue. We promise you. Next on our agenda is Gloria Olin, Policy and Communications Director of Move LA.
Good morning, if anyone's left standing. I work for a nonprofit organization called Move LA. We are a business, labor, environmental organization that works very closely with the Mayor of Los Angeles and with LA Metro to build transit and transit-oriented development. We were instrumental in getting a ballot measure on the ballot that provided $30 billion to build 12 new transit lines in LA. And we believe that we need to make it easier to do infill mixed income development around transit. Right now it's more costly, complicated, and time consuming than any other kind of development to build. And we believe that we need to make it easier to build around transit for national security reasons, because we need to get off foreign oil, for economic security reasons, because right now gas in downtown Los Angeles is $5.16 a gallon and has been for 2 weeks. Moreover, this is where real estate experts say that the market wants to build development. Walkable neighborhoods near transit, demand for development in these places is so great that land values have climbed 40% to 200% in the last decade. I know that in Hollywood, for example, where there are 4 subway stations, property value, and it was a redevelopment area, property values climbed 600% in the last 15 years. So this suggests that there could be significant tax increment around stations. We believe that it's especially important to gin up the housing market right now around transit, because we believe that we can't fix the economy unless we fix the housing market. We believe that tools like tax increment financing can be really important in this. Believe that we can do this without recreating or reinventing redevelopment. Can do it just by using existing law in a very focused way, not creating any new tax indebtedness. And in the meantime, providing local governments with a funding source to make improvements near stations and also to build affordable housing. On page 3 and 4 of this PowerPoint, there is a lot of current law that could come into play here. In fact, current law gets us a good part of the way there. As many people have talked about today, Infrastructure Finance District law, passed in 1994, allows for the use of tax increment. SB 1818 provides developers with density bonuses and parking reductions if they build projects with affordable housing. SB 375 provides for CEQA streamlining near transit stations. SB 310, which was passed last year by Senator Lonnie Hancock, allows for the use of tax increment near stations once schools have taken their share of the increment, and it also requires that 20% of all units are affordable. The problem, of course, which other people have talked about this morning, is that it takes a 2/3 vote in order to pass these infrastructure financing districts. But there is another bill that was introduced last year. It's been approved in the Assembly, and it has been approved by the Senate Policy Committee, AB 485 by Fiona Ma, which would eliminate the voter approval requirement. And it would also use 20% of the tax increment for affordable housing. So would the governor actually agree to eliminate the 2/3 voter requirement? You know, we believe that after the dust has settled on this whole budget crisis and this elimination of redevelopment, that yes, perhaps the governor would consider eliminating the 2/3 requirement. And Fiona Ma said that she too believed that that was the case. Or perhaps there's some way to change the wording of her bill so that the tax increment couldn't be diverted until after state general fund revenues have reached a certain point, or some such arrangement, or perhaps the voter approval requirement could just be reduced to 55%. Anyway, just to sum up, I know you're all hungry. I'm hungry. My stomach is growling. We believe that existing infrastructure development law and AB 485 minus the 2/3 voter requirement could provide the right mix of incentives and requirements that could result in more equitable development being built near transit.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? No questions. I want to thank you for your patience and for the presentation that you have provided us. Okay, members, we are almost at the end here. I would like to invite our members from the public that have so patiently sat there and waited. And just like our presenters were given a limited time, I want to ask you to please don't be repetitive. Don't repeat. If you know your opinion has already been stated, your name and city of residence is sufficient. And for those that have a written statement, please submit it to us in writing. We will have our staff look it over, and the members of the committees will be briefed on your comments. Leave your contact information in case we need to get back to you if we have questions about your comments. So with that, sir, state your name and city of residence.
Thank you, Chair Member Torres, and members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to address you. I'm a director of the California Alliance to Protect Private Property Rights. I live in Orange County in the city of Mission Viejo. You know, Marianne O'Malley gave you a report earlier from the LAO about it being a mixed bag on what worked and what didn't. And that's really part of the problem here. We need to put on a rear view, look out the rear view mirror for a minute and look at redevelopment. I work with Senator Kehoe on SB 1206. In that bill, we had metrics. We had qualitative and quantitative data to define what was blight. Unfortunately, you've got city council people who do not have the expertise, so that it's whatever it's in the eye of the beholder. And that's part of the problem that you have. So until and unless you eradicate or at least have a standardized form for defining what's blight, we're going nowhere. You're here today because of the greed of the League of Cities and the CRA, who put the special interest needs above the needs of education, police, fire, and special districts. Our alliance will lobby against any effort to divert tax increment financing for any new programs going forward. So I wanted to be here, let you know that that's where we stand. I thank you for your time. One last point, because I see a friend of mine is here. Ralph Cato lost his home in Fresno. Just compensation, he got 10 cents on a dollar. So when you have somebody here talking about, we'll just take the property away at a discount and then we can pass it on to the developer down the road, is truly over the top. We don't support that. And we, again, thank you for your time. I know
Thank you so much.
A lot of other speakers.
Thank you for your comments. And one more announcement, please. We have a large crowd of folks that are waiting for our committee to end so they can begin the next committee. Once you have stated your comments and you want to leave the room, if I may please ask for you to leave out of this door so that you don't get blocked off by the group that is waiting to come in. Go ahead, ma'am.
Good afternoon. I'm Judith Christensen, a retired city council member from Daly City and a former redevelopment director. We've had redevelopment in our town since 1976. Its goal was to end blight and to promote economic development. It did not. 36 years later, you drive down the street. In fact, a history museum's on that street, which has photographs of what the street looked like back in 1976. Now we have boarded up storefronts. We have property that's been eminent domained, lost the businesses, lost the jobs, and we have a behemoth luxury condos that was sold to the developer. First of all, the city eminent domain, the property, sold it to the developer for $16 a square foot. I came with my checkbook and wanted to buy a few square feet myself at that price. And so we have this 95 luxury condominiums. It went bankrupt. It went bankrupt again. It's been built for over 7 years, and it's sitting there. 16 units are rented. So we have a giant, soon-to-be, I hope not, a crack house in our neighborhood. What we want to make sure that happens is that that kind of craziness does not continue to happen, and that eminent domain, which puts the fear in everyone's heart. Every small business person, every property owner is terrified of that. If you want my property, you come to me, you buy it fair and square, the American way, and that's what we want to see.
Thank you so much for your comments. I think that you will find that this committee agrees with you in many ways. So thank you. And no clapping, please. The next guest.
I'm Sherry Passmore Curtis from the GAN, former consultant from the GAN Commission on Fraud, Waste, and Abuse in Government. We're representing and have represented private taxpayers that have been funding this for over 50 years now. And look at us and where we are coming out of the recession. One of the last states to come out of the recession, and we still have over $100 billion of property tax increments that have to pay off the debt. Economic development has not worked through the redevelopment process. Anytime you're going to use tax increment financing or the local property tax, please consider the stakeholder, the property taxpayer, that they have a say in what kind of development and improvements, whether it's infrastructure financing districts or other private districts, that they get a chance to vote on it. For your affordable housing, we have a system that has attacked Prop 13, older housing areas, which used to be where you would step up, buy an older house, and it would absolutely bring you into affordable housing, and you could step up, increase. We, before redevelopment really got going, had a country that was economically viable. Now our whole country is in debt, so much so that the people who want to keep building affordable housing, they're like drug addicts coming here. I feel sorry for them.
Okay, your time is up. Thank you so much for your
Thank you.
comments. Next.
Jean Heinel. I live in Southgate, and I have a residence in Amador County. I am a rental property owner, and most of the property my husband built when he was in his 20s, and we still have that property, of course, under protection of Prop 13. So the rental property, the private enterprise builds low and affordable income better than the government does. Keep it that way.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ben Rockwell. I'm from Long Beach, California. I've been sitting for 20 years on the Central Project Area Advisory Committee for the Redevelopment Agency. We have built hundreds of units of low-income and very low-income properties with the monies with redevelopment that have been used for seniors, persons with disabilities, and people that are working hard at good jobs but at very low pay. We need the income from these to keep our housing supply. We have, at this time, we have 800% of the needs for regular housing, while we have less than 10% of the need for low income and less than 5% of the need for very low income individuals in our neighborhoods. And these very low income individuals are persons like myself with disabilities and or seniors.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dana Smith. I'm from Daly City. I'm a former planning commissioner in our city, and I've worked for nonprofit organizations in the Bay Area for over 30 years. I just want to say the comments I had earlier suggesting a kind of hybrid 501c3 nonprofit that would be under the control of politicians elected to city councils is a very frightening thought to me, and it is a total perversion of the basic tenets of the nonprofit sector. I first learned about redevelopment eminent domain about a decade ago, and I couldn't believe that something like this could happen in America. Seizing a private person's home or business to pass on to another private owner, it's un-American and it's undemocratic. I have to say, too, that most of the victims of this sort of abuse of property rights tend to be lower-income people and communities, lower-income communities of all colors.
Thank you.
So please protect us.
Thank you. Next guest, please.
Hi, my name's Cherie Cosia. I'm from New Smyrna Beach, Florida. New Smyrna Beach started their CRA, established it in 1985. We have an incredible slum and blighted area. It was slum and blighted in 1985, and it is still slum and blighted. And I happened to come across the Moore Conference. I attended in April, and I attended today. The reason I came to speak was to commend you in California for abolishing the RDA and hope that my governor, Scott of Florida, will follow your lead. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Yes. My name is Yolanda Reynolds, and I come from San Jose, California, the city with, I think, the mother of all RDAs. And I want to say that I agree with the previous speakers who mentioned desired the end of the use of TIF. And I heard some people say that, well, we need to get consent of the other stakeholders. But not once did they mention the taxpayer. And I'll tell you, one of the things that makes people out in the community very cynical about politicians is because they think they're paying for the fire department, like this woman spoke, that they're paying for all these other things. But they're not, because it's going into redevelopment for projects like you heard are not doing what they're supposed to be doing right now. I'm very concerned that the legislature actually takes action to make sure that those successor and oversight agencies have enough funding to see what's really happening. Right now in San Jose, we're talking about building a stadium for the A's that are currently in Oakland.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Chair Torres, thank you for allowing us to speak. I've been learning about redevelopment for over 13 years, fearing the time when it would hit my neighborhood in Sacramento, California. But I have watched other people. I've listened to them cry. I've heard their stories. You go into their communities and you see the damage and the pain. You'll see John Ravelli, who's here, whose tire shop was taken in Oakland. I saw him during the hearings when he was here. I see him today, and the pressure and the threats that he went through is over. But I have to encourage you to stop. I don't know if you all look very young to me. I'm 72. But I have to say that you probably have never heard of free enterprise and the free market, because redevelopment has been in Sacramento since 1960. So I encourage you, as a real estate broker of over 40 years and somebody who would never support taking private property for infill development, for a transit-oriented development. And I would imagine, I don't know who the real estate people are that the young lady spoke about before, but I can tell you they're probably from the California Redevelopment Association and not from the industry that I work with. I have many, many questions.
If you could submit those, and we will get back to you.
It's very important. You are the only hearing agency or body that we have to speak to. There are many hundreds of people that are listening, and this is the only time they have a chance to get an opportunity to think about this where they wouldn't otherwise
I understand,
hear it.
but your public comment portion is only 1 minute, and you have
Ma'am,
overexceeded that.
I do appreciate you listening to us, but please, if I could ask you to do a couple of things. Make sure that you pass legislation, that the controller's booklets continue to be printed until the RDAs are closed, and that the 7-member boards, 4 of those members are the redevelopment agency members themselves. The other 3 are special district schools, colleges.
And I would be more than happy to sit with you and follow up on a later date.
Thank you so much.
I want to end this in a lighter note with you and to tell you that you look very young, too. Thank you for being
Well, you're darling. Thank you.
Absolutely. Go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. I appreciate this opportunity to commend the Brown administration, Governor Brown, and the legislature for ending the tremendous loss of taxpayer dollars that occurred through redevelopment. Originally empowered to combat blight, redevelopment became a form of economic stimulus. But as public policy, it's been an extremely inefficient form of stimulus. Recently, the Brown administration was echoing our concerns, the opponents of redevelopment, talking about how every dollar that was invested in redevelopment was returning about half that value in terms of economic stimulus. Therefore, it's important the tourniquet has been applied. We're preventing that loss of these scarce property tax dollars. I'm a sitting city council member of the city of Fullerton, and your charge now is to ensure that we prevent additional leakage through these oversight committees and through the actions of the administration. To make sure, there are many scams going on currently. My city of Fullerton has over $90 million in assets that were formerly redevelopment agency. They've encumbered over $300 million in future property tax revenues for various projects, which many were in only conceptual stage. So the ability of bodies like yours to penetrate and to assure that those monies aren't squandered in new redevelopment
Thank you.
schemes is very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Fullerton is not that far from me. I'd be more than happy to continue this dialogue. Thank you.
Ken Woods, I'm Baldwin Park resident and business owner. You've heard all these pretty words. I'm going to give you a dose of reality. Our business was taken 24 years ago from the downtown area, moved to a side street along a railroad track. Our business was growing with 6 employees. It turned into a mom and pop. We now, I'm 73. My wife is as old as I am. I'm not going to say how old she is. Anyway, we still work to pay off the debt we incurred in that 24-year-ago move. We only owe $91,000 more. So redevelopment is going to require me to work until I'm dead.
Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. Thanks for listening to us. My name is Earl Jentz. I'm from Southern California in Chula Vista. The RDA in Chula Vista has not been successful. It's been top-down, money wasted and inefficient. It's shorted money from schools and public safety. So please don't create another monster, and please don't shortcut the public input process.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
My name is Christopher Sutton. I'm an attorney from Pasadena. I represent property owners and neighborhood groups who fight redevelopment. Number one, I'll echo the comment earlier that you must continue to have the controller collect and publish data on redevelopment financing. If that's going to end, you're not going to know what the impacts of the reform. Number two, eminent domain must never be allowed to raise its head. Number three, you must understand what the impacts are today. In Pasadena, where I live...
Sir, your time is up. I have a line of people, and the next committee starts at 1:30. Thank you for...
In some areas, 97% or 98% of all the property taxes go to redevelopment. All of them. So that doesn't matter. Unless you eliminate it, none of the taxes will go back to the local agencies.
Thank you.
My name is Sarah Foster. I'll make your job easy. I won't take any time except to say, please listen to the people that came before you and to the people that are behind me, because they've been there, they know what it's about. Please don't revive it in any way. Not the TIF finance, not the eminent domain, nor this incredible bonded indebtedness. Get the damn debt paid and keep redevelopment dead.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Thank you. My name is John Walsh. We all look very good for our age. I'm 99 years old. Fighting CRA all my life has kept me young. I want to say how attentive you people have been. You know, I've spent 40 years in front of the LA City Council. That's like the gulag. I mean, nobody gets ruder than the LA City Council.
Sir, would you speak to the issue, please, because you only have less than a minute
I'd like
now.
to speak to Ms. Atkins. You asked what the largest special district is. Well, in Los Angeles County, it is the flood control district. We'll have the seat on the council. I'd like to go to HollywoodHighlands.org for more of our remarks. I represent not the owners, but the renters. On February 1st, an exterminating angel disappeared. They were going to take my landlord's building and they were going to give it to Capitol Records so they could build a coffee patio. Go to IJ, Institute of Justice. Go to Walsh Confidential. Visit Walsh Confidential, Hollywood Highlands, HIGHLANDS, or the mother of all anti-CRA redevelopment.us. Please, thank you for your courtesy. Goodbye.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
My name is John Ravelli. I own the Ravelli Tire in Oakland that was taken by eminent domain. And I am the ultimate little guy the government is always wanting to look out for, except when that little guy owns property they want. And I want to vote to eliminate eminent domain and redevelopment because I don't want to see anybody go through what I've been through in the past 8 to 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Gary Jansen from San Jose. I'm tired of having eminent domain hang over my house, my single-family house, like a thundercloud ready to zap me with a bolt of lightning. That's not America. The city of San Jose has had, I don't know, $5 billion. They wasted about $4 billion, and they built some buildings with the other billion. Close it down entirely. Don't let it arise from the grave like a vampire and suck more blood out of our city treasury. Lastly, a very wonderful and a famous president said something to this effect. The closest thing to eternal life here on this earth is a government program.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. Annette Hipona, City of Daly City. My family and I own 5 properties within the redevelopment area. 3 of them are on the redevelopment area. For the last 11 years, I've been highly involved in this, so much so that I ran for offices. I became a school board member, lost city council, and am presently the city clerk. We, in my family, do not want to see redevelopment return in any way, shape, or form. The eminent domain, the blight, the constant worry about what is going to be our future is very difficult. I want to emphasize my family's blue-collar, auto-related businesses. Where are you going to put us? Still, when I hear all the high-rises coming to central downtown areas and all that, I never hear anything about that. Please, those are those good-paying jobs, those blue-collar jobs, plumbers, auto-related, all that. Thank you again for your time, and thank you, Jerry Brown.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Valley Sharp Geisler. I'm from San Jose, California. We are renowned for having the absolute abusivist redevelopment agency of the past, I hope, and I'd really like it to stay that way. Some people can be adept at squirming around the situation. I'm really hoping that you can write laws that keep them from coming back, keep redevelopment from coming back. But let me just say, I'd like to volunteer to help with looking over those 400 and some odd reports that they're going to ship up here just to look for possible fraud, or if you have another place to plug me in. So
we'll keep you in mind. Thank you so much for
you.
the offer. Next speaker, please.
My name is Greg Tuttle from Pomona, California. I flew in specially today.
Great.
And I wanted to thank Chris Norby and his group for educating an old man that didn't understand redevelopment till they handed me a letter. And I've been in business 31 years in Baldwin Park, and they said, get out of town. We're redeveloping your area, and you're not welcome back. Well, with Chris Norby's group and several other people, we got a lot of education out of this. What I hope happens out of this is we stopped it. It's dead. Now, please have good government and have the agencies watch over this dissolving of this, because I've seen the city of Baldwin Park dissolve land and hide land. I've seen all the other cities work together and talk together of how they're going to get rid of the lands and hide the lands. They think it's a secret. We all know where it's going. But we need you. We need you to be a government that's going to watch and try to figure out what they've done and hidden this stuff. Because what happens is if these cities get away with this, then there's land lost to the citizens of the city. So we would like you to make sure that the agencies that govern over these cities, that it's people that it's independent and that can watch over and understand redevelopment, not people that are just auditors. Okay. So thank you very much for your time.
Keep Pomona safe for me while I'm away.
Okay.
Next speaker, please.
My name is Ralph Cato, and I'm from Fresno, California.
My home was taken from me when it was nearly paid for, and there was no way for me to recover. There was no just compensation in it. True enough, it was taken at pennies on the dollar. And I'm here to tell you that redevelopment is riddled with corruption. The grand jury called me and Richard Erganian, who's sitting right here, in, and with the information we gave them, they called in the FBI, and they came to Fresno from, I believe, Washington, D.C., and took about 30 people to prison. The corruption in redevelopment cannot be stopped when it's allowed to run rampant without it is not accountable, and it's highly unfair to landowners who are helpless and have to afford their own attorneys to fight against the state and the city paying for attorneys for the developers and for the city to do this to them. They become helpless and homeless. I haven't owned a piece of property since, and it is not possible for me to own property. My property was paid for.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
My name is Bonnie Butler. I'm from Riverside County. Redevelopment agencies are just a very, very bad thing. The area that I lived in, and I still live in, I'm the only person left. The other people, 3 of them are dead. 1 has dementia. I'm still there. All the area around me, homeless people occupy it. They come in with pit bulls. I go home. I find the pit bulls in my yard, which has a 6-foot gate. I've buried 3 dogs in the last 2 weeks. I don't know what I'll find when I get back. Redevelopment is not good.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, thank you. My name is Doug Vagum. I'm from Fresno County. I was just appointed by the Fresno County Board of Supervisors to be on the Oversight Board. As a former member of the Fresno County Board of Supervisors, we witnessed firsthand a lot of the redevelopment agencies, a lot of waste, a lot of projects going for naught. Also, we witnessed the ERAF invasion of county property tax. As ERAF grew and RDA agencies started putting their foot down saying no more ERAF, we're here today discussing this. You put in a very good law with AB 26X. Some of you agreed, some of you didn't agree. But the fact the law is in place, the oversight board is in place. You have agencies now that represent all the people. And remember, this money belongs to all the people in the counties. And let us sit and discuss this before you make a lot of modifications. You're
Absolutely.
getting a lot of witnesses telling you to do one thing or another. Let us do our work county by county. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Again, thank you all who traveled a long way to be here. Your input is absolutely welcome. And if some of you feel that you haven't had enough time, I welcome you to step into my office and make an appointment for a follow-up meeting. If you would please exit out this door, because we have a large crowd of folks that have been waiting for this committee to end. And having said that I will now adjourn the special hearing. Thank you.